We are recording.
Okay, I will call the meeting of Lowell Light and Power to order for the January 14th, 2025. Roll call
All right, Chairperson Beecham,
here.
Vice Chair Fonger.
Here.
Board Member Straubin.
Here.
Board Member Crawford.
Here.
And Board Member Cadwalder.
Here.
Agenda, approval of the agenda. Any changes or anything?
No, sir.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Supported.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the minutes from the December 10th, 2024 regular board meeting.
Move to approve the minutes.
Supported. It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Safety moment.
All right, that is me today. I'm in the rotation. Uh-oh. Is it froze? It's froze on here. I bet.
No.
No?
Hold on, we try to pull it up.
All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and start talking. The graphic will be there. But I'm gonna do the safety moment on safe shoveling. Seems appropriate with the snow on the ground, but just a couple things to remember. Obviously, it's cold. That's something to consider. We'll get this fired back up, but a couple things. Hopefully shoveling is not dangerous, but it can be. Obviously, there's a lot of hazards. If you're having heart attack symptoms, I did get not necessarily kicked, but the first thing they bring in here, or first thing they bring to your attention, if you're having heart attack symptoms like pain in your chest or shortness of breath, stop shoveling and call 911. Don't continue shoveling while you call 911. Stop first. But obviously shovel in shifts instead of all at once. Take breaks and drink water to prevent dehydration. It's easy to get dehydrated in the winter, so make it a conscious effort to stay hydrated. Push the snow instead of lifting it. When you are going to lift, think about your back safety. Lift with your legs, not with your back. Avoid twisting. Obviously, that as you lift, that's also a hazard for your back. And if you're using a snow blower, pay attention, read the directions, follow the safety instructions. But again, these are all things that everybody knows, but it's easy to forget some of these things when you're out dealing with the massive quantities of snow that we're going to see this winter, maybe. So, but that's the safety moment for the meeting.
Okay. Moving on, public comment. Any public? Hearing none, we'll move on to action items.
All right, so the first action item is a review and potential adoption of PA 235 Renewable Energy Plan. I call it a potential adoption because there is no requirement for the board to take action this month. Board does need to approve a plan no later than our end of our February board meeting, because we have to submit this plan or has to be filed with the Michigan Public Service Commission by February 27th. The plan, again, is in we talked about it for numerous months. We've provided the feedback that we've kept the board updated on the feedback that we've provided to MPPA. We've worked with them quite a bit throughout the process. We've done the renewable energy credit board trainings where we talked about RECs being that path to compliance and ultimately what we have to retire in order to claim any percentage renewableness. But as the board is aware, PA 235 was passed at the end of 2023, requires that we reach I can't believe I didn't put it. It's in the plan. I don't want to misspeak. We have to be 15% renewable up through 2029, 50% renewable from 2030 to 2034, and then 60% renewable moving forward. The plan that's laid out in your packet is a 21-year plan. It is not the definitive path forward. It is not a roadmap. It is very much what appears, it's probabilistic modeling. It's the highest degree of certainty in the methodology used for reaching compliance, basically. Things will change. The law and the MPSC recognizes that the extraordinary pace of change in the industry will drastically change these plans. We have to submit an amended plan at least every 2 years. So I thought I would just kind of jump into the plan. Megan, if you wouldn't mind pulling up the color-coded copy. So you have just the raw plan in your packet, but wanted to just kind of walk through the plan. The framework is fairly simplistic as far as following along. There's a lot of numbers. What happened behind the scenes and the data that is utilized to ultimately come to a fairly simple plan is pretty exhaustive, and the process was fairly exhaustive, but I thought we'd just kind of work through it. From top to bottom, that green section up at the top that is completely blank. It's blank because we have two different choices for the methodology for establishing our compliance threshold. We can either use a weather normalized load, or we can use our basically a rolling 3-year look back. We've historically used the rolling 3-year average for the initial renewable energy standard that the state produced. So again, the green section is blank because we're not proposing to utilize a weather normalized load calculation or compliance calculation. So if you slip down to the purple section, it essentially just flows through and establishes a 3-year average of retail sales. Then there's a couple slight adjustments, but ultimately it gets to that highlighted row, which is the renewable portfolio standard required energy credits. So that is our compliance requirement. You'll notice that it jumps up quite a bit in 2023. That's because those standards increase in 2023. So that the highlighted line is the amount of renewable energy credits that we have to retire on an annual basis to remain in compliance with PA 235. You go down to the bottom, again, it's fairly simple. That line, or row 20, energy credit beginning balance, that's what we're anticipating bringing into the year. And then your items in blue are kind of your additions. And again, our biggest additions are energy credits obtained through PPAs. You'll notice that the plan doesn't show any energy credits obtained through generation, and that's just based on we know there will be opportunities, but we don't want to necessarily represent that we're going to be owning renewables when we can't definitively say where or when. But so that line or that row remains blank, but that's one of those changes that should an investment opportunity and ownership opportunity come up, which are more likely to come up due to the direct pay tax credits that are included in the IRS, the Inflation Reduction Act. But as you go through, you'll notice that the majority of our renewable energy credits are through PPAs. We also have quite a few moving forward that are obtained, that are just purchases, energy credits through REC purchases. Again, last month we approved the Energy Plus REC purchase power commitment, and essentially that was a bilateral energy transaction that was paired up with a bilateral REC transaction. Municipal utilities have the luxury of using purchased over the counter RECs for compliance up through 2035. So that's why you'll notice that those energy credits obtained through REC purchases are pretty elevated and they drop off when the compliance doesn't allow us to utilize them anymore. Then you go down and then the red items are essentially the reduction, removal credits. So we have some through energy credits sold. And then really it gets down to row 27, which is the compliance requirement. Those are what we have to match up, though you'll notice that those align with row 18. And then it ultimately establishes a beginning balance for the following year. Long-term, kind of big picture, you'll notice that we have a little bit of a buildup in the earlier years. That's to take advantage of the 5-year shelf life of the RECs. But again, that's just kind of a walkthrough. If the board has any feedback, again, we don't have to, board doesn't have to take action this month. If there's any questions, any more clarity that you'd like, I can work with MPPA and we can bring it back in February, but we would need action in February so that we can make sure we hit that filing date with the MPSC. So
I personally would rather act on it tonight than to push it off, if everybody's comfortable. We just don't know what future brings, whether there's storms or, or whatever. To always wait to the last minute, I'm not in favor of that. One question that I have, and again, because I'm looking at each column, and is what numbers do we get that shows us? So between 2025 and 2029, we have to be 15%. So again, I'm not seeing like a column. Oh, we're at 15% here. We're at 16% here. We're at.
It's just done.
it's just a footnote.
Okay.
So you take this number, which is all our adjusted sales retail average, but for compliance purposes, it's that number. So in years 25 through 29, it's that number times 15%. Gets you that. When you get out into 2030, it's that number times the 50%, and then
that gives you the number that we have to do. Okay.
That
Gotcha.
times the note ultimately establishes that compliance requirement number.
Gotcha.
And the sold RECs are RECs that are generated outside of MISO's footprint. So we leverage, it's essentially landfill, or well, some of them. The sales are pretty much, they're all those renewable energy credits that are generated off of landfill gas projects. It's registered in PJM. So we have to sell those in the RTO that they're a part of. And then MPPA offsets and buys the equivalent amount of my RECs. Right now, it's a nice arbitrage deal. So we're able to leverage some favorable conditions in different areas to maximize the value of those RECs. But you'll notice that in years really 1 and 2, the RECs obtained through, or the energy credits obtained through REC purchases aligns with the energy credits sold. And that's just highlighting that arbitrage deal to get the equivalent number of RECs and my RECs, the Michigan RECs.
What are the pros and cons of the weather normalized method, and why are you recommending we don't use it?
I'll be honest, it was more of an MPPA decision because MPPA is producing 22 of these reports. And it creates I think there's a little more, you roll in new load, so you don't have this incremental jump when if we had a King Milling bring a 1.5 megawatts on at 70% load factor, it's a lot of credits, and that would be a pretty big jump. And it's not driven by weather, where if we use a 3-year average, we essentially are able to smooth that big course change over that 3-year time window because it's based on the average. So that to me is the biggest driver.
1 year versus 3-year average. not so much has to anything to do with weather normalized.
Yeah, well, the weather normalized, it can move. I mean, it moves things and it's supposed to create a consistent, if load stays the same, it will give you a more consistent number. But being as small as we are, we're more susceptible to, you know,
Individual businesses.
yeah, shaping the whole need. So it's a great question, but in part of it was driven by MPPA and the fact that they want a single methodology across all their members, and this is more advantageous for the whole membership. Happens that it's a win for us, and it's the route that we would choose if we were given that opportunity. And it to me, it also lets you bank a few more credits because we need the energy. So we're going to be bringing these projects online to meet our energy need. It gives us that, the fact that we can realize that load growth over that 3-year window really puts us in a little better position to have some flexibility.
Any other questions? Okay, I would entertain a motion.
I'll, motion to approve the PA 235 Renewable Energy Plan with any edits that Michigan Public Power Association may need to adjust.
It should be good to go. Should be, the board's, approves it. It should go as is to the MPSC.
Okay, now support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
All right, there is no memo in the packet, but I wanted to provide an update on the Earned Sick Time Act. Technology is, there it goes.
Great.
Can you still put it in presentation mode if it's in read only, I think?
It's a- Find out.
Yep. All right, so thought I'd just jump in, try to make this as quick as possible, but wanted to provide an update. Could go to the next slide, please. Provide an update on what's happened since the December meeting. We had this initial conversation. We have gotten some more clarification and expanded our understanding of the law. One of the challenges that we had identified last month was our prohibition on paying out Earned Sick Time Act time. Once we went back to our legal counsel and worked with them, we got a better understanding, and the ESTA prohibits employers from paying out unused ESTA time to active employees, but we can adopt a policy that would allow for payouts at the time of separation. We can set it just like our policy says right now, where if you put a 2-week provide us with a 2-week written notice, you're eligible to be paid out for any unused PTO. The only caveat is we would want to cap the amount of earned sick time hours that can be cashed out, because we cannot cap how many can be accumulated. So we wouldn't want somebody to just not touch them for 10, 15 years, and all of a sudden they have 1,300 hours that we've got to pay out at the time of retirement.
So this is trying to correlate this to what we've been doing. We've allowed employees to in December,
Yes,
and we've allowed them to up to a week in December and up to a week in June or whatever,
one or the other. Yeah,
one or the other. So we can't do that anymore.
we can't do that with the ESTA hours.
Okay.
We'll get to a tentative proposal on the next slide, but essentially, last month we talked about, let's take our PTO bank and let's split it into a small bank that, well, for some people it's small, some people it's bigger than earlier on, it's bigger, but split it up into a bank that's compliant with the law and a bank that is essentially unchanged from the way we do PTO. How can we make as few changes as possible and keep it, but get in compliance with the law? So if we split it, that ESTA bank would not be eligible for payout, but it'd be 72 hours in there, and everybody uses at least 72 hours. you could still get your payout out of your regular bank. So yes and no is the answer.
Okay, well,
You just,
No,
it's just
I'm
that
just
one
looking at-
bank you
I
could.
just, I was a big proponent of that. And I just, you know,
Not proposing to do away with it. We just can't quite do it the same
Right, the
because we
same
can't
way.
make these hours eligible for payout. But looking back at our history and who's cashing in hours and how many are being used, everybody uses at least what would go into that ESTA bank. So as long as they're using that time first, or they're using that and saving their other bank, they'd still have those hours available. But it's not something that's widely taken advantage of. People use their time mostly.
so so what is our policy? So if somebody does have, at the end of their career, has, I mean, a bunch of hours,
Don't let that happen is the key. Because if we're taking, for theoretically, employee qualifies for 172 hours of PTO. 72, and again, we're getting ahead a little bit,
Yeah.
but 72 would go into an ESTA bank. The other 100 would go in the rest. The key is using those ESTA bank hours and not having anything, and there's some qualifiers. I won't get into the details, but we're trying to make some slight adjustments so it eliminates the risk of losing hours, because if you finish the fiscal year with leftover hours, they become very difficult to use under the law, and how we're structuring, how we're trying to make our PTO policy comply with the law. So yeah, the key is just don't. But if at the end of your career, we can adopt into the career separation forever, we can have a policy that at separation we pay out. So the only change is those ESTA hours wouldn't be eligible for the December and June payout, but you could use your other bank to do that.
but we don't have if you're retiring, leaving the, you're, if you have a bunch of time in there, we currently are not paying them.
No, we are.
We are
Yes. We pay out all unused.
100% or
100%. All, as long as you meet criteria. You have to provide 2-week written notice.
okay.
But that's also why we cap, you can only roll over 80 hours in a year. Because we don't want to see banks of 400, 500, 600 hours, because then that liability grows. And obviously, you got to write somebody a 1,000-hour check at the end of their career. We're going to notice that one on the income statement pretty quick. So, but yeah, still can preserve. Again, the goal we talked about last month, the goal is to change as little as possible.
Mhm.
So that policy would stay in place. The only real tweak would be that June and December timeframe. That separate bank would not be eligible. But if you want to cash in 40 hours, you could use your other bank for that.
Okay. So is our policy right now that somebody does have a whole bunch of time accumulated and they're retiring and they give a 2-week notice, and they meet all the criteria, we're writing them a big check?
What do you consider big? So
We're writing them for all the time that, can they accumulate
No,
$500?
no. You can only
100 from the previous year, so it could be
80
80 from the previous year, 80 from the previous year
plus your current. Yeah. So if
if they use none.
if we had somebody that was due 264 hours, I think that's the max, right? Somebody's been here for 13, 14 years. I think it gets to that. I don't remember. Longer, that's the max. If they carried over 80 hours from the previous year and retired on July 1, we would be paying out 264 plus the 80 that they carried over. But there are limits on that, on what that could be.
Okay.
And the thought is we take our current pool and split it up into 2 pools. it doesn't change that overall liability.
I mean, philosophically, for me, I like employees that want to be here all the time, but I also think that employees should utilize to not, how I want to say this, to be energized to be coming back and doing your utmost best. I think that's why we have that's why we have time off, in order to rejuvenate your batteries and everything. And I want to see our employees take advantage of that and not,
And that's one of the reasons,
take no vacation at all. And then,
and that's why we're trying to make as minimal changes as possible to make sure that we continue to provide the same level of availability right now as we would under the law. But so that's an expanded understanding of the law. We did have an all-employee meeting last week, I think. I'll say that it's a dense topic. There's a lot of pieces and components, so it can be a challenge to hear it for the first time and really process what those impacts are on you. I know Julie and I have spent probably hundreds of hours at this point digging into this, so we have a better, we've gone through it 20, 30 times. But I will say, coming out of that all-employee meeting, there was some really good feedback that we ultimately have incorporated into the tentative proposal that I'll get to next. Again, we've continued to take board feedback, take our previous understanding of the law and our expanded understanding of the law, and draft a tentative proposal for the board to consider. And then I also want to provide a legislative update, because this, as I mentioned last month, this has to be a legislative fix at this point, or legislative reform. The court path does not exist anymore, with the Michigan Supreme Court weighing in on the constitutionality of the adopted amend strategy. But the Senate, which is still controlled by the Democrats, has introduced legislation that would change the law, reform the law, and the House of Representatives has also introduced legislation. It's still, it's gone to Republican held. So I only bring up the partisan nature because there are opposite sides of the aisle that are ultimately going to have to reconcile their differences. But it also indicates that both sides of the aisle see the law as overly burdensome and onerous on employers. That recognition is important. So my personal opinion is that they figure something out. It'll be one of those catch-22 I'll be glad to see some common sense changes, but it'll be tough pill to swallow, the amount of time and effort and opportunity cost that's gone into trying to get ready for something that doesn't ultimately come to fruition. But changes would be best for us.
well,
And the law itself.
like, as a board member, I think it's forced us or whatever to constantly look at what our current benefits are, and make sure we're still doing things that are doing things that are in line with what our employees want and need, and also what our ratepayers want and need. So, I
completely agree. And there will be, when I get into the tentative proposal, I'll highlight something that I think I'd like the board to consider regardless of whether the law goes into place. It's some of the things that, as you really get into some of these conversations and you find the pain points, and you find some common ground where it might be best just to consider some alternatives. So only other thing from legislative update is a special committee in the House has been created to address these reforms, which is kind of nice. It's also a bipartisan committee. So we really are counting on some bipartisan common sense adjustments to the law that remove some of the overly burdensome provisions in the law, the no call, no show, the fact that we can't do anything if somebody doesn't show up for 3 days. They show up on day 4 and we can't even ask them for a reason. All they got to do is say, I was sick. My dog, my neighbor, somebody that is a friend that I treat like a brother, it was sick, and there we go. So we need some common sense fixes, but if you'd go to the next slide, Megan. Yeah, oh, sorry.
If an employee did have 264 hours, did he or she ask for payments over a little time so that I don't get all hit at one time with a huge amount of taxes? Could you say I want to do it over a 2-year period, so I'm retired and
We tend not to do that, and I would not begin to claim to be knowledgeable on tax implications. I know large lump sum payouts are challenged. I'm gonna put our tax man or accountant, no. But really, for most people, the amount that we're talking about, your tax liability at the end of the year is your tax liability at the end of the year. Yes, that check might be taxed based on a higher tax bracket because they assume that you make that amount 26 times a year. I think I may be speaking incorrect, looking for head one way or another.
No,
But I mean, your tax liability is your tax liability at the end of the year.
you hit it all at one time too with my burden labor
Yeah.
payouts.
it's, I mean, yeah, whether you get it paid out, it's really, you have to move it to a different year to try to
Correct.
Yeah. So
minimize.
we tend not to be talking about, I mean, a couple hundred hours. It's a significant amount.
But it cover the tax expense.
Yeah.
And then if they might end up getting a bigger refund because
Yeah.
they didn't make the rest of their income the rest of the year.
And timing's different. So we tend not to. The simple answer is no. We tend to say we pay out at the time of separation, whether that's voluntary retirement, whatever the case may be. We're good. So tentative proposal, there's a lot here. Some of this will be a little new, some won't be. But again, temporary and part-time employees, plan is just to start following the law. They'll earn 1 hour of sick time for every 30 hours worked. For full-time employees, split existing PTO bank into 2 banks. The ESTA bank would essentially be 72 hours, and then the normal bank would be your current allotment of time minus the 72 hours that were deposited into the ESTA bank. Again, the ESTA bank, it would be available for use for all purposes protected in the law, but it can also be used for any purposes that normal PTO can be used for as well. Kind of goofy, but so essentially we create that. One of the things that we discussed that's kind of a change from last is increasing the cap. The law says that we can cap the amount of ESTA hours that can be used in a benefit year to 72. It's a may though. We want to put a cap on it because you can't cap the total accrual. So again, we don't want somebody to end up with 2,000 hours of ESTA time 15 years down the way and then say, cool, I'm taking off, extended periods. So we definitely want to put a cap on there, but if we increase that cap, if we're providing 72 hours on July 1, but we make the cap, you can use up to 80 hours in any benefit year. It allows for a little bit of wiggle room, and it would ultimately allow employees to carry over an additional 8 years into the next year. But there are some unique situations where if we front load at the beginning of the fiscal year, some employees wouldn't see earned hours until after the next fiscal year's allotment had been provided. If you think about that payroll that spreads between June and July, you could run into some timing issues. So essentially that 8 hour of carryover just allows for, or that cap at 80 hours allows for 8 hours of carryover. At that point, it makes sure that everybody has an opportunity to use the hours that they're given. Kind of to your point, Perry, that the board and as a company, we're providing these hours. We want our employees to use them. We want them. We want to make sure there's opportunities to use them. So that's just a small tweak. And then again, the normal PTO bank is essentially the only change is our current allotment minus the 72 hours that would ultimately go into the ESTA bank. Adopt an additional policy that at the time of separation, the current, any unused ESTA hours from the current fiscal year's allotment would be eligible for payout. And again, that's putting that cap on there so people don't just roll over an uncapped limit. And then the policy would require a 2 weeks written notice, and that's just keeping parity with our current policies. The last one, new full-time employees. This is something that came out of our discussions with the employees. Right now, for your entire first year of employment, for every month that you work, you earn 8 hours of PTO. So if you're hired on the 15th of July, August 15th, you get 8 hours. September 15th, you get 8 hours. And it's an ongoing cumulative accrual over that first year. So what we are going to propose is aligning this with that methodology with just the first 90 working days, which is what our probationary period is right now. And part of that is it's a manual process, and we regularly run into challenges with these first year employees. We've been fortunate to find some really great employees since I've been here. In every single new hire, people have lives, they have plans, they have vacations planned, they have sick kids, and that slow accrual can be a challenge. And by the time you get to that 90 working days and you get through that probationary period, that's a pretty big switch from a probationary period to a post probationary period employee. So I thought it made a lot of sense just to align that. It's a smoother process at that point, but currently at the end of your hypothetically, you get hired July 15th. The following July 15th, so for one full 12-month period, you earn 8 hours a month. The following July 15th, you would get a prorated amount of an annual allocation, or you currently get a prorated amount from the annual allocation for the remaining time in the year. So I should have picked it, started at a nice round month, but you get 23/24 if you made it through a half a month, something like that. You get a prorated allocation to get you through the remainder of the fiscal year where you celebrate your 1-year anniversary. And the following July 1, you're given a full allotment. It makes that initial process, it draws it out over a pretty long period of time. And the problem that we ran into is the accrual of ESTA time is the easiest way to ensure compliance is either just follow the law, earn 1 hour for every 30 hours worked, or front load an amount that you know will get you compliant. When you do this accrual method, it can be challenging. So again, talked about proposing to align that ongoing accrual methodology for the first 90 working days. During the probationary period, employees would just follow the law. You get 1 hour ESTA time for every 30 hours worked. This is kind of a convoluted mess, but this law makes everything a convoluted mess. When your normal PTO is accrued, so we use that July 15th to August 15th. On August 15th, you would be due 8 hours, but you already would have earned some of them because it would have been in the form of ESTA hours. So what we would do is say on the 15th, we'd look back at how many ESTA hours were earned in the previous month. Hypothetically, you earned 2. You worked 60 hours the previous month, a week and a half. Instead of getting 8 hours dumped into your normal bank, it would be 8 minus the previous month's ESTA earned hours. So if you earned 2 in July, you'd be given 6 regular PTO hours in August during your normal accrual. again, trying to keep everything as close to current as possible.
You do the same overall.
You're getting 8 hours over the course of a month. That's the key.
It's just the math to split it.
And it's just a pain in the butt.
Yep.
So again, at the end of the probationary period, employees would receive a prorated allotment of ESTA hours and normal PTO hours to get them to the start of the following fiscal year. That next July 1, you're given your annual allotment. So it condenses this already kind of complicated process down to quite a bit more. It does slightly change our exposure from a liability perspective. And I don't want to act like it doesn't. We are quicker to give lump sums of time, which would be eligible for payout at the time of separation. Again, the hope is that by the end of the 90 working day probationary period, we know who we want to be here and we want them to be here. Again, we run that risk with any employee waiting till July 1 to terminate anyways. So it does change things in the earlier years where employees are probably more likely to leave. I think it's probably anecdotally probably more likely to leave after a year than after 10 or 12 or 15. But so that's our tentative proposal. And we can go back to it, but I'll finish with the last slide real quick, kind of next steps. Looking for a consensus from the board to either move forward with the tentative proposal and incorporate any feedback that the board provides tonight. Ultimately go back to work with our legal counsel to finalize draft policies. Kind of goes without saying, but continue to monitor the legislative landscape. If the law changes, we obviously don't want to continue to march down this path. And then what we'd like to do is present those policies to the board in February, have the board take action during the February board meeting, but make that action contingent on the effectiveness of the ESTA. So if there is a legislative fix between our February board meeting and February 21st, we're not stuck in this or coming back to the board with additional, hey, we got to roll this back to the way it was. Because if the law changes, the only thing I'd like to explore with the board is this change in the probationary period in this first year of time accrual. I think it makes a lot of sense to tie it to the 90 working day probationary period regardless. I think it's a big win for our employees, and it's not necessarily overly burdensome to us as an employer. So we can go back up to the proposal, or we can take this however you all would like. But
So I have a question, and I don't know if it pertains to this or not. So we've had before where an employee has used up all their, it's in, not every day, but it's used it. We've used it before in certain circumstances where an employee has used up all their sick time or whatever, and other employees have donated their time that they've accrued towards that to help that employee out. Or at one time we had an employee that was a bone marrow transplant, and he was going to have sick time. He was going to use up a lot of his sick time. We made some special adjustments in that case, but and it wasn't he was donating that time for somebody that was not related to Lowell Light and Power, but we just, it was a circumstance that we dealt with. So that's just my question is, in this new law and everything, as an organization, can somebody donate part of their time to another employee's bank or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, I actually wanted to dig up the email from the attorney because I knew we had addressed this. Yes, nothing changes there. The ESTA does allow for donation of time. So that policy can essentially stay the exact same, but it would apply to both banks. And we want to make sure it's clear that it can be from your normal, it would be from either your normal bank or your ESTA bank. But so yes, there is no change there.
Okay, that's the only question I had.
Question on that would be, say, a bunch of people donated ESTA bank time just to come off work. You kept using and pay the hours for that person, she. But now they're getting extra ESTA to keep, would it be useless to that employee? You know what I mean? So like 10.
Yeah, it
instead
would
of
be, I
using
mean, it's
every
capped,
day,
it's capped, so we
everyone
would
gets
need,
ESTA days.
that's a really good point. We would
Then
need
it's
to,
160, but you can only use 80, so then essentially they gave you time you couldn't use.
you couldn't, yes, we need to,
Maybe we could-
we would just need to craft the policy to make sure
Yeah.
that that doesn't happen, but that's a great point I didn't think about. Again, you talk blue in the face and not think of that, but you're absolutely right, is if we cap it at 80 and a bunch of hours are donated, there's no avenue to use them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be hard to do, but
Two separate PTO donation banks?
I would just say.
You'd have to keep the hours separate probably, because you can't, I don't want to speak,
Policy that says donated ESTA hours do not count towards the regular
that's what I'm,
ESTA cap of the year. Just, I mean, it probably will never happen, but
About the time we say that,
yeah, and really, the way that we're designing them is, all with the ability to carry over 8 hours essentially, or increase the cap to 80. Almost everybody, I don't think, I was gonna ask Julie and decided it was futile, but nobody's using less than 64 hours in a year. So it would probably just make more sense to donate regular EST or regular PTO hours and save your ESTA hours. And as an employee, you have a little more flexibility with those hours with sick kids, things like unexpected things. So I want to explore that with the attorney. And as long as we can put that provision in the policy, let's put it in there. In the off chance that it happens, let's make sure we're protected against it.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great catch.
and I don't, I hope I hope employees never have to use that. But again, I just think that it's us as a employer just looking out for the benefit of our employees, because you do hear that, and a lot of times it's not so much. I think it's more of you're dealing with a sick child or whatever, and they're having to spend a numerous amount of hours at a local hospital or at a not local, Cleveland Clinic or whatever the case may be. And I just think it's important for us to be able to still continue that.
Agreed.
so right now they get 8 hours a month,
So just the first year.
just in that
Yeah.
first 90 days.
Yeah.
Day 91, they still 8 hours a month after that, or is the way you're proposing?
Yes, it would be based on, yes, it's based on 96 hours a year. So that's the sum over that. So that's what we would do, is base it on, in that first year, you earn 96 hours.
72 of which.
Or, yeah, it does not leave a ton of other hours. It's also why we crafted the ESTA bank to be able to be used exactly like all PTO.
Yeah.
It is, you actually have more flexibility and more opportunity to use those hours than you do other hours, because you're legally protected to use them. And we're legally prohibited from doing almost anything to verify that they're legitimate.
This is probably done. So PTO, we're still back where people are, does this law change vacation time and everything? Or, I mean, there's still, we went from having vacation to just a whole
Don't-
hours earned, PTO, and you used it for whatever you,
We're doing everything we can to retain that. It's called Earned Sick Time Act. But it's really, they're not sick. It's not sick time. It's just two separate banks of PTO. One is dictated by a law, one is dictated more by policy.
Okay.
But we've also incorporated the policy side into the law-driven one to allow the exact same flexibility plus some on those hours.
okay,
I'm gonna
So-
run if I don't hear anything more.
so I'm assuming, if there's not any more that,
Let's say,
you got your
I would say,
marching orders to go back and bring it back. You know, any tweaks or anything that you want to do and bring it back to the February board meet,
hope it
unless
does.
you want it.
I hope it doesn't come. Honestly, I hope there's a legislative fix by then, and that's the report that I provide, and then we can tackle, I'd still, again, so I guess the other question I'll ask is there, should this fall through, we have some newer employees that this change to this first year, I mean, is there
I think you just bring back that if it hasn't, if the law hasn't changed or if it has changed, bring back what your discussions were with the new employees and with the employees overall, and the board will consider those things at that time.
I think it's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, because it's just unknown.
Yeah.
To see what, so it'd be a lot, you know.
Because there might be some other tweaks that they put in
Yeah.
to change it, and we have to deal with.
That's what Julie and I were talking about at the end of the day, is that they might make a fix and it may,
Cause more problems, cause new problems.
I hope not, might cause new problems.
Cause new problems. Yeah.
Okay,
Once they give us some time, we'll be good. So yeah, there's the ESTA update.
okay,
All right, that's action items and that's just future action item. So we'll roll back over to, what we got next?
informational items.
All right, so annually, every year, we, per board policy, we present on the previous fiscal year's financial metrics. Tag team this one with Megan a little bit. I don't know if there's anything you want to highlight, but the data's in the board packet.
I mean, it kind of speaks for itself this year.
Things are great.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, this is one that we can kind of scroll. I think let's skip over the numbers and let's look at some graphs. But as you scroll through the graphs, 10% of, you'll see that, we're trending in the right direction on, percent of 10% of plant in cash. Again, first couple are cash related, days cash on hand. This is one that obviously we have talked about exhaustively over the last 3 years, and it's always nice to see a plan kind of come to fruition. It's been a little quicker than we originally laid out, but the fact that we are back north of that 120 and we are steadily increasing to an amount that we can be comfortable that we can take major disruptions and still retain that, or still remain in compliance with that north of 120 days of cash. So debt coverage ratio, again, trending in the right direction. I don't remember what all debt expired on this. I don't remember timing wise if it was a cash driven or other, but I don't think it was. We're heading in the right direction. Yeah, some debts, but debt coverage ratio, debt to equity, again, we're paying down our debt. So continuing to trend in the right direction there. Rate of return, it's nice again to be back north of the line of our target. And then investment versus depreciation, we brought it pretty quick to back at that target, but you'll see over the long haul, that 2023 was a blip. That was a number we obviously hope to strive to stay north of that depreciation, but really across, and then Aegis system, where that one kind of stays a little more steady. And that's just a product of a relatively small capital budget compared to overall plant value. So happy to answer any questions or happy to entertain any additional comments or insights from Megan. She's the one that pulls all this together and really has her finger on the pulse of our finances.
I just put the data in the Excel document. Here's the graphs for you, so.
All right. Shoot, I like it. We're gonna roll on then. Performance data. Again, overall sales are continue to trend as expected. We are 6 months through the year at this point, so we're starting to really see the growth. I mean, we really notice it in the commercial industrial space, and based on feedback from the last board meeting, we tried to include some notes as to what rates are being represented there. So we didn't add anything to the residential one because that one thought was a little self-explanatory, but no, some of the other ones, industrial classes, are those primary metered services, and then what's considered commercial are your general service and your general service demand. And it may not necessarily be reflective of what is actually happening. Ooh, don't spill. But we'll move on. Again, cash, I want to stop on just briefly. We took a slight cash hit this month, and that was largely attributed to we paid for the you remember what the number was? 165,000-ish, $165,000 or so for the conductor to pull under the Grand River at Jackson Street. So that came in. You'll see more flavor of that later, and probably next month there'll be some more, I would say. So a little bit of a cash hit there, but we're still actively funding our capital project or our capital budget. And then that's really about all I had. I'll stop at the PCA again. We're still seeing some of that upward pressure on the PCA. Love to see some more rate relief for our customers, but that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, the 165, what had been budgeted for that cable when we first looked at that several years ago? Was it?
Oh, so the price did not change, correct, Megan? Yeah, we thought it might fluctuate a little bit because it was to be escalated by a copper raw metals index, but it stayed the same. The total expense came in a little bit higher. I think it was about 15 grand higher, 10-ish maybe. I don't remember it wasn't less than 10, but there was more wire on the reel. So it was just it's a per foot calculation, and there was a little bit more wire on the reel. So the total cost went up slightly, but price stayed steady.
So when you purchased that, when you say there's more, we didn't purchase more, that's just I mean, I know when commercially purchased floor covering or whatever, and the mill runs that, they have an overage, and the overage can be, and is that the same in the wire? There's overage, or did we order more, or?
No, we ordered a set amount, and I don't know if they just came in.
So they give you a tearaway amount. So instead of giving you 2,500 feet, they give you 2,510 feet or 25 feet. Just because if the end of the wire is damaged, they don't want to take that away from their footage. So that's the reason. And I think we were 200 feet over.
Yeah, it was minimal.
So,
Same.
3 spools. It's minimal. It's a minimal amount. It's just when per foot price is loppy, it adds up quick.
hard to stop it if they got 200 more feet to run in that. They're just gonna finish that.
Yeah.
200 feet.
Yeah.
And cut it. Really.
It's not an unexpected variation, I would say.
Yeah, and like when you pull into your tail, so it gets longer on the side of the dead end side. So they also take that into effect that you're gonna lose 10 to 15 feet on that as well. So.
Cool. That is performance data. Like I said, it's the same graph, same reports as every month. Happy to answer any questions.
Can we look at the one before the last?
The paperless bill auto pay. Yeah, and I think this graph may go away. We've kind of a lot of this was monitoring a newer thing. As you can see, we're kind of plateauing out, which is what we expected. There's only, and then over much longer periods of time, we expect slight growth as our the technology aligns more with the masses, I guess. I don't know a nice way to put it.
Customers have a different mindset.
Yeah, I mean, it's to be honest,
Younger people come.
yeah, I don't want to, it's not an age thing, but it's not an age thing, but it is. It's very much an age thing. Not asking anybody to die.
Somebody will move
But-
it. You'll always have a customer.
Yes, and that's what it is the people that replace aging customers tend to be younger and tend to, and also the new neighborhoods, the expansions tend to be younger families, more likely to embrace a paperless solution. I mean, we have very defined demographics or customer personas, and yeah, so that graph will probably go away as we plateaued out. I don't think there's nearly as much value. I still think it's neat to look at how few months we've slipped, but I think we're to the point where we'll see a little slippage, little growth, little slippage, little growth. And I don't think that necessarily brings much value to the board at this point.
Only as you were scrolling through it, I'd noticed the red line dipped down. I thought it was December to January, and I thought something changed that people, but then I realized it's not it, and that's not even a dip. So,
So,
but kind of a non-issue to me.
cool. All right. Any other performance data questions? All right. We'll roll on to the outage report. Zach, take it away.
There were no
All right. He's done. Moving on. No, we had a really good month. It's not without some trouble. Yeah. Yeah. Not without trouble though. Zach highlights in his report that there was a car pole wreck on Washington Street over in Craig's neck of the woods. Didn't cause any outages at the time. They were able to go back at a later date and do a planned outage, but they were out there working in some really dang cold weather and did a great job buttoning everything up, making it safe and coming back, but still no outages. And then there was some trouble out at From a couple times, wasn't there?
Yeah, there's two, but it actually ended up stemming from a internal problem.
Yeah. So all in all, your mom's apparently removed enough squirrels that we're in good shape. No, it was a good month. In my mind, it was kind of nice to see no outages because I knew there was some trouble. I knew that in my mind, there were things that I were thinking of, but to see that none of them were within our control to prevent, that says a lot for where we're at. And it's not easy. It's not an easy month usually either. It's cold. Cold can find some trouble.
And I'll say too, our upgrade we did along there was a big reason why that didn't have any outages. Because
Absolutely.
that would have definitely caused an outage the way it was before.
A large outage too.
Yeah, it would have been probably 100 customers. So that is nice that upgrade also saves some outages.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. That's great commentary.
Is there ever any consideration of like protecting poles next to roads or intersections or something? Because it seems like over the last few years we've had a few of these. It's like, I mean,
This one,
yeah. I know it's a thing with a lot of poles, but
this one I can confidently say probably wouldn't have been a target.
We actually moved the transformer from one pole down that was on the long straightaway so that somebody would have hit to this pole. So we tried to do that and slightly backfired. Yeah, so we tried.
Does that guy get the full charge for the repairs?
Yes. Yeah. We will send an invoice and most of the time insurance covers it. We just get a check from the insurance, but yeah.
The other places opportunity, like putting bollards next to poles or just some way of preventing a car from taking it out. Not even at a slow speed, because some of these streets aren't that fast. But-
Yeah, this is an
I mean,
interest.
granted, the cars can do whatever they want, but I'm assuming some of these.
This one was, this one, he had to been going pretty fast. I mean, he relocated a class 2 pole and those things are stout. And it was new, so it wasn't like there was any opportunity, oh, it had a little heart rod or it had a little shell rod. No, it was so to give you an idea, in most utilities, I'd say standard pole's a class 4 pole. If they want to go a little beefier, they might go to a class 3. With the rebuild on the east side, we went to a class 2 pole because gives quite a bit of flexibility, especially on the more heavily loaded poles.
Class
But-
2, 30 than.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Smaller than.
Yeah, smaller the number, the greater the circumference is at the base of the pole.
Wire gauge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
this is where I had questions.
All right. Income statement. What questions do we have?
So generation expenses, I mean, current year-to-date actual and current to what we budgeted for, we're to the good,
Yes.
how I'm reading that.
So this is a byproduct of the budget was approved before the audit. During the audit, we went ahead and expedited the expense of the regulator station behind the office. So we had been realizing about 110. I'm going to use round. It was something more than 113, 116, something like that. We've been realizing 1/7 of that total expense annually for the 7 years after it. This was scheduled to be our last year, but what it was tied to was it was tied to the rebate from consumers. We were never going to realize that rebate. So we went ahead and wrapped up that expense. So we fully anticipate to finish the year about $115,000 under budget on that number, to the good for us. So that's exactly what that is. And that number will continue to the good, will continue to grow throughout the year. But as you can see, realistically, we should have realized about 58,000. So we're about realistically, we're about $10,000 under budget on that department.
Okay.
Other than that, again, it was healthy net income. That number is growing, but ultimately that's what's funneling into the capital budget. So you saw a healthy net income, but a slight erosion of cash. So some of that support from the income statement is flowing through and providing that cash that's necessary to continue to invest in the capital budget. But happy to answer any additional questions. I had conversation with Craig yesterday about transmission expense. That number's all over the place. Be happy to get into details, but transmission is just a challenge. It's probably I don't know if you'd agree, probably a lengthier conversation than at the board meeting, but happy to get into any details that anybody'd like to see or hear. I like to highlight the interest income. That's a big win. We were conservative in our budgeting, and we're confident that we're going to exceed our total budget, and that's a good thing. We've taken a lot of it. We've taken advantage of favorable interest rates, and I think we continue to maximize that opportunity. And it appears that we'll continue to have some pretty good opportunities moving forward with the slowing down of rate changes at the Fed level. All right. That is the income statement. The capital projects, again, we're moving forward with a lot of stuff. On the detail side, you'll see some of the other work that we've done. Obviously, there's quite a bit of work that's been done on the east side feed. Obviously, the board's aware of that, but additionally, there was some work done in your neck of the woods, Riverside Drive, where they will reroute some power, clean things up quite a bit. That's been wrapped up. Flat River Estates. If anybody is not aware, there's 11 homes going in up on North Washington. That is called Flat River Estates. We'll obviously be serving that in the city limits, and nobody else is in the area, but you'll see some work there. Other thing I'll highlight is, we're starting to see some credits. I think last month there was an ask about the IT projects coming in over budget. We've invoiced for that final invoice. I know we've talked about it. So that's back in line now that we've shared those expenses with the city. So that was just more of a timing issue. Beyond that, we keep moving forward. A lot of attention on the east side feed. You'll see continued movement over there. We're gearing up for Stony Bluff Phase 6, which is not currently budgeted, but we have the ability to take that on. It's going to be a spring thing, maybe early summer, but we're gearing up for that and making sure that we have funds available to make sure we can meet those customer needs. But you'll see quite a bit of movement on the east side and some system expansion with Flat River Estates. And then depending on timing and when Stony Bluff Phase 6 really comes to fruition, that could be late in the fiscal year, maybe early next fiscal year. And those are capital projects. All right. I think I've stole half of Zach's thunder in his report, but I'll hand it over to Zach for the distribution report.
Stand up and report.
All right.
But I got questions for you.
Right.
And after the meeting, I'll share, because you might want to reach out to one or two residents on Riverside. So because it says it's completed, are a couple of the questions that were proposed to me by a few neighbors were, so there's a couple, they're kind of like, they're appreciative, but they're kind of going like, we had one pole, now we got two poles sitting there. And I didn't ask you, but I basically was under kind of, I thought was because the poles have AT&T and the things,
Yeah.
we're waiting for them to move theirs onto the new poles, and then those poles will be removed. Okay,
It takes a year plus for Comcast to get out there and do that.
so anyway, I'll give you the names afterwards, and you can just, that's what I told them, I think was happening.
Yep.
But you might just reassure them, and
Definitely.
so that's the only thing I had on that.
Cool. All right. Casey, take it away.
Stand by my report.
All right. Any questions on generation report? All right. Megan, take it away. Office report.
I have a lot to say on my report. Welcome.
Get out the popcorn. Yeah. All right.
So what is the rebranding? Is that being held under top secret?
I would say that's not ours to report on.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. Not our, was it not our circus, not our, whatever this thing. No, that's very much a chamber-led initiative, so we would not want to speak.
That'll be coming out soon. Again, can't say anything. Once the Lord,
Yeah.
a few years.
All right. So I'll roll on to the manager's report. I'll say, please read through the report. I try to put a lot of information in there. We might not necessarily touch on them, but there's a lot happening at MPPA. One of the things I want to highlight is the refinancing, or not the refinancing, the debt issuance for the repowering of Bell River has closed. That was a big step. We are obviously participating in that debt as I've discussed, but a lot going on at MPPA, we're, you know, for one reason or another, we've got, seems to be 4, 5, 6 touch points a month just because there's so much going on. Health insurance update. I did want to make sure the board was aware when we adopted our new health insurance in July, we were somewhat limited in what we could do from HSA contributions because we had our FSA plan year did not align with our HSA plan year. So there was a little bit, but it's long story short, starting in January, all HSA participants are where they should be. And we're kind of caught up to that lag that we had to have for 6 months to let the FSA benefit year roll out. Tomorrow we'll be, MMEA is having a webinar on PA 95, which is, if the board will recall, every June-ish, I think it's June, I don't remember exactly what month, the board has to elect whether or not to participate in the Michigan Low Income Energy Assistance Fund, which ultimately funds the Michigan Energy Assistance Program, or is one of the funding sources. Historically, we've opted out. We're no longer going to have that option. We have 2 options. We can either participate in the state program or we can participate in a local program which is essentially an alternative program. So we're having a webinar tomorrow and going to be joined by Wendy and Monica from FROM to see just what we're going to learn together and see if there's any alignment there that may be beneficial to everybody. So more to come next month, but I want to kind of keep touching on that one because that's a pretty significant change and it's coming right around the corner. So,
I mean, like an alternative program, does it have the option, the possibility out there to keep those funds in electric?
no.
Okay.
The alternative program, the guidelines have to match the state guidelines and they have to be available for all heating sources. But the alternative program would ensure that funds collected from our customers were redistributed within our footprint. Would not come back to us. A piece would come back to us, but it's really more about keeping local dollars local instead of collecting local dollars and shipping them off to a state program.
So would we have to do an alternative program to keep it in our footprint?
You have to.
Oh,
yes.
okay. So
You participate in the state program.
Go wherever.
Yep. You fund whatever they fund. Some of it would come back.
Gotcha. Yeah. Gotcha.
So what we're going to be looking at is what's the burden? What's the administrative burden? What's the lift to keep this money in our community? Because I think that's obviously the preference. Preference is to continue with no change. We're meeting our customers' needs through the A+ fund. That's no longer an option, but if we can keep those local dollars here, at least our dollars aren't being collected to get shipped off to some other piece of the state when, if there's a need here, I'd rather the need be met here. So we have to participate in one program or another.
Gotcha.
Cybersecurity training. I know it's everybody's favorite topic. If you haven't done it, please do so. I believe 100% of our staff has completed it. So I know that Lisa likes to get those buttoned up, but please, if you could button those up in the next day or so, that would be extremely helpful.
Sure, how often are you getting those before?
We do them quarterly.
And I haven't seen them come from the city. And I was getting them almost monthly.
I'm not sure how the city's approaching it. We manage those in-house. Lisa does, where I think the city's having IP consulting help them.
I'll check.
But we tend, there's no requirement from what my experience with cybersecurity insurance carriers has been, is they want us, it's not just a cumulative total of hours, it's a frequency, because those touch points are good reminders, keeping it top of mind. So most of that I have experienced have wanted to see at least a quarterly training.
I thought they put them together. I like the people that were in those videos. That's pretty fun. You didn't get any?
And those are doing well.
The British.
Yes.
And stuff like
If
that.
anybody on the board
Those are fun.
Oh,
turning their.
oh yeah. we will keep that one open. I doubt about that. I'll have Lisa.
Yeah.
If you haven't done it, we're gonna have to gather up tablets. Thank you. I didn't think through that one all the way. But I'll ask Lisa to keep it open for a week or so, or a couple days beyond when tablets get back to you. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight here is just the anniversaries. We had 3 anniversaries last month, and thrilled to have everybody on the team. But Julie celebrated 14 years with us, which is a heck of an accomplishment. Zach's celebrated 7, which is a heck of an accomplishment. And Tony Domer, 2nd anniversary. Couldn't be more thrilled to have all 3 of them part of the team. So we're very fortunate to have all 3. Other than that, pictures, some interesting pictures here. We did have a little ugly sweater. I can't remember what we ate for that. We ate something. Oh yeah, it was a potato bar. Oh yeah, I made chili. I'm thinking that one through. Yeah, had a little get together with everybody. Did an ugly sweater. Mark went full bore. Those are poinsettias on his arm, so he was decked out top to bottom. Lisa participated in a consortium with people throughout the country, and thought that was fantastic. And then some before and after stuff. And I don't know if Zach, you want to say anything, but about any of these pictures, I'll give you that opportunity.
Yeah, so when we started speccing the digger truck just to get quotes, he offered to use a demo truck that had, if you see the top right picture, Jared is actually running the truck through a remote control. So to have us test and use it, see if we liked it, and obviously it was pretty awesome. So
Yeah, and that's pulling in the wire onto the river.
Yep.
That one might, I don't know if that was necessarily under the river, but
yeah,
that one is.
yeah, right there's the under river thing.
Cool. Great work. Appreciate it, everybody. And Perry, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, scheduled meetings in your packet. Next regular board meeting is February 11th. Right here at 6 o'clock. And board comments, Tina.
Bravo to the anniversaries that we had this month. It's just, once again, whenever I have to be in Detroit, I bring up Lowell Power. And I'll tell you, they're getting kind of sick of it. Some of them are like, oh, I power, legally, yeah. La, la, la. So they're teasing me on it, but they are very they're well aware of that. And our new West Michigan vice president, he wanted to move to Lowell because he'd heard so much about it from me. Whenever he comes by my desk and kicks my cage, he definitely wanted to, but he couldn't find a house that had our imprint, it was within us to be able to service him, and he needed land with it because his wife is actually, she raises kangaroos for zoos. So she's actually, they're outside of Saranac.
Kangaroo farm outside of Saranac.
Yeah. Yeah, so she's pretty cool. She's a huge brainiac and beautiful. So, but definitely a shout out that people like them heard about all of you, and they wanted to move to Lowell to hear about and be a part of this community because of that. So that's it.
That was so cool. I can't move the requirement.
I asked him what does kangaroos taste like, and he was horrified. So, yeah. It's my Marshall did think it was funny. Yeah. There we go.
Andrew.
Yeah, sorry I had missed the last two meetings. I'm gonna have band concerts for my kids that for some reason they like to pick the same Tuesday that we did. They were good concerts though. And then also congratulations to, Julie and Zach and Tony. I'm always amazed every time I see those, how long it's been. It didn't happen to me here 7 years. Probably 3 or 4 or something, and then Julie's been around about as long as I have. So that's basically. I'm glad that you guys are sticking around as long as you do. And doing good work for us too.
Okay,
That's all.
Mr. Salzwood.
Over the New Year's Eve, I attended the ball drop off at Ludington. I mentioned it to Charlie. He'd be interested in maybe having the truck for the ball drop. Once I was there was between 10 and 12,000 people.
Wow.
Downtown. It was fantastic. Shops are open. People were having a great time. Fireworks being shot off the building. But once I got there, I found out you needed a DPW involved to block the streets. You need the fire department to be involved, so there's no fires after the fireworks. You need bars to be open, so they'd be willing to stay open at 2 o'clock in the morning. There's a lot of things. So I talked with Shannon today at the chamber. They thought about it. There's a lot of work that has to be done. I don't think it's gonna happen in 2025, but I think it would be something that might be good down the road. For that, I have some great pictures. It was really a great time. I actually stayed at the Eagles, they have an Eagles, and we stayed there till 3 o'clock in the morning, till 4. I couldn't make it till 4. But special clubs get special considerations to stay open. Don't know what it was, but great band, old rock and roll band. It was really good. I asked if I gave the card to the chamber today that thought maybe they didn't have this year's shows already packed, but they already do it. Maybe that will band, so maybe next year we can get them on that party. Zach, what did you start with, 14?
No.
Pretty youthful. That's it.
Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, congrats on the anniversaries. All those are. Sorry, Julie, 14 years of this, but thank you. I would have voted for Casey Sweater out of all of them. Is unique. I liked it. Yeah, thanks. And you pass it along. Thanks for stopping by and saying hi. It was nice. Yeah, that's it.
Craig.
Well, yes, congratulations, Zach, 7 years, and also congratulations to Tony and Julie. Another thing I wanted to mention is going through the APPA news, there is a conference coming up at the end of March, beginning of April, and it focuses on safety. And I'm just throwing that out there, since safety is a priority for us, and it's in our strategic plan. I don't know, maybe one of us board members should consider going to that conference.
So are you up to driving?
Okay.
So we'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
So
Yeah, it's out in Sacramento.
it's in Sacramento.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about,
Okay.
because it's tied in with another.
That's the E&O you're thinking of. This is separate, I believe. I don't think they do I don't know if you know off the top of your head, they do the safety along with the E&O. But I think you're talking about the E&O, which is tied with the lineman rodeo.
I was
I'd have to-
assuming that the safety was at the same time,
I have to look, it might be, I'm not, but that.
because it would be, anyway,
Yeah.
Okay.
we'll figure it out.
Yeah, well, and yeah, that's right. The lineman's rodeo is coming up.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, we've had some discussions. We're trying to figure that out. Yeah, we used to, since COVID, things have changed and we haven't, and yeah, Yeah, talk about afterwards.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nothing else I can think of.
Okay, I just have a couple things. One, Zach, congratulations. And Julie and Tony. The other is, please tell your employees, I really appreciate the new employees coming. That, again, they don't have to, they came, introduce themselves, we get to see them, we get to, when we see them when we're driving by on the road, we can say, hi, and oh, that's so-and-so, and that's, and it's just, it's really, as a board member, it's really, I really appreciate that immensely. And I believe the rest of the board members do also. The other is, as we're sitting here, we're watching a truck go by from Lighthouse, and it just puts in my mind that, is that going really well? Are they a great neighbor, a great renter? And just, like to hear from the guys that are in this building and
Yeah, it seems to be going pretty well. Occasional thing, but for the most part, I'd say it goes pretty well.
good.
It's about relationships too.
Yeah.
You can tell when,
Yeah.
if there's turnover there, I think it takes a little longer to get used to somebody new but it's really about maintaining relationship with the people that report over there. And yeah, I don't hear complaints come to my desk.
No, we have a good working
Yeah.
relationship with them. We get stuff shipped to them all the time, delivered to our door, and they get the same thing from us somehow, so.
I know they're working on projects too to help better contain their different slurries. So I don't know if they get that capped or.
Not sure. They had a truck there, TA, so.
Okay. So they're improving things and working on things and yeah, good relationship and good dialogue and communication.
Good. I guess, and with that, that's all that I had. I would look for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
I support.
It's been moved and supported. Any comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.